since Suez, this is the only area of undoubted British international leadership. And sadly now, because of the activities of this government, but not only this government, that reputation has been gravely damaged. And that sort of international leadership has now really disappeared.
Back is Ed Vasey in for Hugo Rifkin. Now, this week, the US pledged $2 billion worth of aid to humanitarian projects run by the UN. There are strings attached. The money won't go to areas like Gaza, Yemen or Afghanistan, but the money will help some of the poorest people in the world. The UK, however, has cut its foreign aid spending to a planned 0.3% of GDP by 2027. It was a move somewhat inspired by President Trump in order to increase defence spending. Let's bring in Sir Andrew Mitchell, the former International Development Secretary and a Conservative MP. Welcome to the show, Sir Andrew.
Good morning, Ed, and Happy New Year to you.
You've written in the Times today about this and saying that us cutting foreign aid is leaving the door open to countries like China to fill the gap. Tell us what you mean.
Well, I think the point I'm trying to make in this article is that in every sense, cutting aid that goes and saves lives and stops children from developing disease is a big mistake. But also it's about British influence. All British aid is spent in Britain's national interest because it makes the world safer and more prosperous. But if you pull out of these countries in Africa and you don't provide this help and support as those countries try to build themselves out of the extremes of poverty, other countries will come in and take our place. And they are countries which do not wish us well, do not share our values, countries like Russia and China. And there's already considerable evidence of that happening in Africa.
I'm a layman in this area. You are an expert. You held the brief when we were in opposition. You held it as a cabinet minister. You came back and took it over again, I think, under one of the frequent prime ministers we had after David Cameron. One of the things...
Rishi Sunak, yes.
Let's deal with the two issues that kind of lodge in my brain about international aid. The first is, as it were, the difference between our aid and China's aid. China's international aid seems very transactional. You know, they'll build roads and ports in order to arguably help the economy of a particular country, but also significantly increase Chinese influence, whereas ours seems more sort of touchy-feely, if I can put it that way, less impactful.
Well, that is not the case, although it may sometimes appear to be the case. There's the British Development Finance Institution, BII, is involved in trying to ensure that there are new port facilities on the Horn of Africa, in Somalia and Somaliland. These are very, very important steps because it means these countries can help trade themselves out of poverty. But there's nothing wrong with China investing in building roads and building infrastructure. The question is the terms on which those investments take place. They're often very obscure, that you don't know what's going on in terms of brown envelopes. And also the terms and conditions sometimes come back to bite those countries, which accept those terms from China. If you look, for example, at Sri Lanka, they got into debt with China. So China took one of the ports in Sri Lanka in recompense for that. So there's nothing, doing infrastructure development, helping countries to build their infrastructure as they build themselves out of poverty is a very good thing. In the case of China, it's a question of the terms and conditions that relate to that. And
the second and most obvious question, which you're asked all the time, is how much of the aid actually gets to the people who need it. The old corruption question. You're giving money to a country which has a dubious leadership, and a lot of it gets siphoned off in bribes and huge houses for the leaders.
Yes, it's another sort of canard about international development. Britain led the world in ensuring that there was far greater transparency in all the international development work that is done overseas. Britain always had a zero acceptance of corruption whenever corruption was found in any of our programs or suspicion of corruption. Then immediately action will be taken and any funding from the British taxpayers suspended. And also the government of which you and I were a part introduced an independent watchdog for aid, very important, known as the ICAI, the Independent Commission on Aid Impact, so that we could have an independent judgment on all these issues about the effectiveness that the taxpayer was getting in this spend. But it's worth just noting that there was a time not long ago, in 2010, when there was unanimity across the parties that David Cameron and then Theresa May built on the work of Gordon Brown and Tony Blair. And it meant that Britain had huge influence around the world because this was a clear British objective. And you could argue, that since Suez in 1956, this area of development, it wasn't just about money, though money is obviously important. It was about effectiveness in driving down poverty and countries building themselves up conflict-free and with much greater prosperity, because economic activity, having a job, is the way in which people lift themselves out of poverty. You could argue that since Suez, this is the only area of undoubted British international leadership. And sadly now, because of the activities of this government, but not only this government, that reputation has been gravely damaged. And that sort of international leadership has now really disappeared.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Sir Andrew Mitchell, the former International Development Secretary, who's written in today's Times about the impact of cutting our overseas aid budget.